Hey guys, I'm Kelsey or Red Rum Reads, and this is my introduction to Booktube. As you can probably tell from my handle, I mainly read horror books. I've been mainly reading horror books for a very long time. However, there's kind of a dichotomy there. I also read cozy fantasy just as much. So, two complete opposite sides of the spectrum. I read both equally. I will say my life kind of leans towards horror in all different ways. That's the most that I read. Those are the most movies that I watch. It's kind of all the type of media that I take in. So that is what mainly my content surrounds around. Since it's officially the beginning of 2025, I figured I would kick off with this first video by doing my top 24 of 2024 books. That way you can also get to know my taste a little bit more. I have a wide range. There's horror, obviously, thrillers, literary fiction, there's some cozy fantasies in there. I think that's it. In no specific order besides my top two. First up, Slewfoot. We have The Rejection of a Puritan Society, Awakening of a Demon, and The Pursuit of Witchcraft. A lot of feminist themes. It is very much a good for her type of book. Second, we have American Rapture. I actually got this as an ARC this year, which was just amazing. It's a lot of religious guilt. The apocalypse is happening. It is set in Wisconsin and a lot of familiar landmarks. Lots of dead people, also some found family. Next up is Bloom. It's creepy cottagecore, farmer's market vibes, beautiful prose, beautiful women, very poetic. Fourth is The Library at Mount Char. This is a horror fantasy, kind of a what the fuck is going on vibe. God is dead, weirdos rule. It's very hard to explain what's actually happening in this book unless you just read it for yourself. Fifth is The White Guy Dies First. Doesn't need much of an explanation. It is 13 of the best short stories I have ever read, all written by people of color, where the white guy dies first. Sixth is Echo, A Cursed Mountain. Very creepy, atmospheric slow burn, a lot of dread, and a climbing accident. Also perfect to read right now in the winter. Seventh is Somewhere Beyond the Sea. This is a story with a lot of social commentary on how the world treats marginalized groups, wrapped inside this cozy fantasy about an island filled with magical children. Eighth is Immortal Dark. I don't have the sleeve because the cover is just too gorgeous. Dark academia, vampires, a lot of family secrets, and a lot of yearning. This is the only romantic-y type book I think that is in this top 24. This one it's the best I think I've read, period. It was that good. It also is very light on the romance aspect. Number 9 is The Honey Witch. This is like black cat energy and golden retriever energies coming together. It's a bunch of witchiness, womanly power, stuck on an island together, butting heads at first, and then not. Number 10 is The September House. This is the first horror comedy I've ever read, and it's about a house that's really only haunted in September, or haunted the worst in September, and the couple that decides to move in there. Surprisingly, this was much deeper than you'd think it would be. 11th is Made for You. This is about a synth AI woman who is made to go and compete on a dating show, kind of like The Bachelorette, and she wins. And a year later, the man she ended up marrying on the show, he goes missing, and she's the main suspect. When reality TV meets thrillers, it's always gonna be good. Number 12 is The Bones Beneath My Skin. This is actually a supernatural thriller. It's about running from a corrupt government and people not understanding things before they judge it. It's about found family, and a lot of tears will happen. 13 is Invisible Women. This is the only nonfiction on this list. It is about the data biases in a world designed for men. This was very enlightening. It's probably the number one nonfiction book that changed my life the most. There are so many different examples. It talks about the brilliance bias. It talks about sexist Siri. We talk about the Icelandic women's strike. We actually talk about our ancestors and the weapons that they were buried with versus what their pelvises looked like. Oh, and what Aristotle originally said about the female body. That was great too. 14 is The Teller of Small Fortunes. This is about Tao, who is an immigrant, and she travels the country telling small fortunes. Also has found family tropes, vibes, themes, and a deep discussion into how we treat immigrants and just xenophobia as a whole. 15 is Motel 6. This is the only extreme horror on this list. It was the best extreme horror I've ever read. So, necrophilia is legal, and there are motels set up surrounding it. And this is about a man who goes looking for his wife's body because she signed hers over to one of these places. 16 is Recessive Nature. This is about two man's hunt for the Jersey Devil. This has a very similar vibe to Supernatural, just like the two brothers. This is two male cousins. Their dads, what they think, got taken by the Jersey Devil, and they want to go out into the woods and hunt it down. 17 is Psalm for the Wild Built. This is about a robot and a tea monk. This is after robots have already become sentient. They have left civilization and formed their own community and promised to never again speak with humans. But this tea monk is going on a journey and ends up running into one of these robots. So it's kind of discovery of identity a little bit, and them discovering a friendship that they could maybe have together. 18 is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank. This is about two best friends who I believe are in their 50s, and they work together in this magical world that is underneath a dome. They kind of patrol it. It's a little bit friends to lovers. It's also one of the most unique world building experiences I've seen in something like this type of fantasy. There's also dragons. So this is the second book. There is one before it. 19 is The Weight of Blood. This is a Carrie retelling. It has immense racist bullying. It also has a podcast element to it. And of course, the sweet revenge. 20 is Stay in the Light. This is about the woods that are never ending and you can't get out of. It's about creatures called the Watchers who come and look at you at night, and you don't make it if you're outside. This is actually a follow-up book as well. The movie The Watchers just came out, and then obviously there's the book The Watchers is number one. This is actually better than the first book, I thought. 21 is Living in Cemeteries. This is a horror fantasy with some botanical elements. In this world, you die based on the deeds of your ancestors. So if you had horrible ancestors, you're about to die brutally, basically. But you are allowed to talk to the dead. Once they're ghosts, you can go to their grave and you can sit and talk with your ancestors and see what they did, so you potentially know the cause of your undoing. 22 is Cursed Cocktails. This is about a blood mage who retires from fighting and wants to go down somewhere warm to retire and hopefully start a cocktail bar. This has disability rep with chronic pain. It is pretty low stakes cozy fantasy and some great cocktail recipes. Okay, my final two, my top two, the two best that I've chosen. This was immensely hard to do. So 23 is Don't Let the Forest In. This has dark and twisted fairy tales. It's very cottage gore-y, definitely horror. There's fairy tales written out, but also pictures to illustrate them. It also just has more beautiful prose that flow well. I connected with these characters so well. There's great twists throughout the book that aren't too overreaching. It's also way gorier than I assumed it would be. Plus, look at this cover. Last but certainly not least, my very last book I read in 2024 is Pew. Let me ask you this. What information regarding your identity do you believe that we owe to people? This is about a genderless, nameless, racially ambiguous, mute person who gets by sleeping in churches, and this community decides to take them in. And the entire book is how this community, different members, interact with Pew. That's what they named them, Pew. It was very enlightening and bold, and obviously there's some strong dystopian elements, also a bit of religious trauma. It was all wrapped up in this point of view from the mute Pew person's brain. So although they're not actually speaking at any point, we are getting all of their internal thoughts, which makes this so much more impactful. That was my top 24. I don't think I said this, but I actually read 208 books in all of 2024. My goal for 2025 is to do less than that, actually. I think I need to be more intentional about some of the books that I read, because some I had this year were just horrible. I am getting better at DNFing books, which that's good. Anyways, hope this whole Booktube thing takes off and I like it. I don't know. This took a very long time to film. I don't know. I have mad respect for long form content. I will say that. Anyways, until next time.